Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video lecture. Today let's discuss about the international capital movements contained in Unit 5 of the Chapter 4, which is the last chapter and last unit of Economics for Finance. Basically, this topic is about understanding the international capital movements which may flow into an economy in different ways, and broadly classified into two categories: FDI, foreign direct investment, and FPI, foreign portfolio investment. So what are these different routes of international capital movements, and what is the distinction between FDI and FPI? Also, what are the advantages and disadvantages of FDI? We will discuss in this particular unit. Just before entering into the theoretical discussions, one of the recent news articles in Indian Express says that there has been a huge inflow of FDI and FPI inflows, and that has increased the forex reserves to more than $500 billion in India. So that is the reserves. And as we discussed earlier in the same international trade chapter, FDIs and FPIs are also very crucial in the foreign currency management as well as maintenance of reserves also. So they help any country, in this context India, for increasing the forex reserves. So this is one of the examples or advantages of FDI in Indian context, we can say. But before entering into FDI, FPI distinctions and meanings, what is foreign capital first of all? This includes any inflow of capital into the home country from abroad. So any inflow of capital into the home country from abroad, it can be called as foreign capital. Naturally, for India, any money that comes from outside India, inflow of capital, that can be called as foreign capital entering into India, considering India being the home country in our example. So this foreign capital may flow into the economy in different ways. And what are some of the important components of foreign capital? Important question also. What is foreign capital and what are the important components of foreign capital can be a question. So foreign capital simply means any inflow of capital into the home country from abroad, and what kind of components can be there in foreign capital flows are: first one is foreign aid or assistance in the form of grants, which can be granted by other countries and sometimes even by the International Monetary Fund or World Bank. But of course, recently India is rejecting the foreign aid many times. When floods happened in Kerala, UAE offered some, United Arab Emirates country offered some free aid of $100 million, etc. But India said, no, we don't want any aid, we can take care of ourselves. So earlier, a lot of aid used to come to India. Now, mostly we are giving aid to other countries in Africa, etc. But that is again a government policy matter that can change anytime. But this is definitely one of the possible flow of foreign capital into the country in the form of aid or assistance, which is free, which is not going to be returned, which is in the form of general grants, foreign grants we can call. Borrowings is the other one. It could be in the form of loans or external commercial borrowing or trade credit. Loans also taken by the country level. The government of India itself can take loans from other countries or international institutions like IMF or World Bank or Asian Development Bank. Like that, loans can be taken by India as a country from other institutions, international financial institutions. Or even the companies within India can go for external commercial borrowings as one of the sources of finance. They can borrow from outside India also, of course, subject to a lot of restrictions and regulations. And normally, when there is a transactional relationship between India and another country, or one organization in India and another organization in other country, trade credit is also another type of borrowing the companies and organizations can resort to. All of them are categorized as borrowings, whether in the form of loans, external commercial borrowings, or trade credit, all are borrowings. So one comes in the form of aid or grant or assistance, second comes in the form of borrowing, and another major source is the deposits from NRIs. This also we discussed in the earlier session. NRIs remit a lot of money to India, naturally either for their families or for their own accounts in India. These are popularly in the world called remittances. These remittances are flowing into India. So they are also part of inflow of capital into the country, because once they are remitted to India, money is coming to India. Within India, that is deposited in one of the banks. That means automatically it is entering into the financial system of India. So that is another way or route of foreign capital, deposits from NRIs in the form of remittances. Then investments usually happen in the form of two things. Those are the major things we are going to discuss. That is foreign direct investment, FDI, and foreign portfolio investments, FPI. That is also another way of flow of foreign capital into one country. Of course, this can happen from any country to another country. Naturally, as examples, we take India, since it is our country. So, when we take India as a reference point, it is only an example we have to understand, but these are applicable anywhere. Any country can receive foreign aid also, borrowings also, deposits from their non-residents also. Remittances actually are almost equal when it comes to Indians working abroad and Chinese working abroad, and then some of the people working abroad. Majorly sending remittances include Philippines. They send lot of remittances to their home country, like this Brazil or Mexico. These are some countries which receive lot of remittances from their own citizens who are working abroad. So that is another way of inflow of capital into the country. But most popular thing and biggest item also is investments coming from other countries and organizations of other countries in the form of FDI or FPI. These are the four major components of foreign capital flows. Very, very important question and concept. Now let us enter into the two major aspects, FDI and FPI. In that, first let us focus on FDI. What is FDI? What is foreign direct investment? It is the process whereby the resident of one country, which can be called as the home country, acquires the ownership of an asset in another country. It is called as the host country. For example, if somebody from USA invests, Microsoft company invests in India, USA is the home country for Microsoft, but host country is India. So that is the classification of the words we have to clearly remember. So any resident of one country, which is home country, acquires the ownership of an asset in another country, and such movement of capital majorly involves what? Ownership, control, as well as management of the asset in the host country. Host country once again is the country to which the FDI is flowing into. So here a foreign direct investment majorly looks at ownership, control, and management of that asset also in the host country. It is not just about buying some shares and selling them later, not like that. Usually it involves a long-term relationship. That is what FDI is generally about, and also reflects a lasting interest and control, majorly control, of a resident entity in one country and one economy in an enterprise resident in another economy. So one country or one resident or an enterprise which is resident of one country is investing in another country's enterprise. That is what is FDI. And in general, it occurs through acquisition of, this is the important threshold, more than 10% of the shares of the target asset. So here a target asset generally will be a company, and in that, if the resident of the home country where from the FDI is coming in holds or purchases more than 10% of the shares, then we can call that as FDI. More than 10% is an important threshold, because less than 10% it will be foreign portfolio investment, not FDI. It becomes FPI. So if any company, foreign company, acquiring certain percentage of shares in an Indian company with a shareholding of more than 10% of the shares of the target asset, then we can call that as FDI. That is a general definition. But once again, this is not a hard and fast rule. There is no 10% hard and fast rule. Nothing like that. Let us say recently Google, Facebook have acquired some percentages, 4%, 5%, 8%, like that. Multiple companies abroad who are foreign companies, mostly American companies, acquired Jio, some share in the company Jio, which is related to the telecommunication and other services in India. So that is less than 10% each of them have acquired, but still it is called as FDI only, because the intention there is long-term relationship and a lasting interest is there in the investor to continue that relationship with the target asset. So that is the important aspect. But if that is not clear, then 10% is one estimate. That is what is the standard throughout the world which is followed. So once again, it is not a hard and fast rule that it has to be more than 10%. But in general, yes. In general, when we can call something as an FDI and something not as an FDI but FPI is when the investment from the foreign company into the Indian company is more than 10%, we call it FDI. Less than 10%, we call it FPI. There is no law like that about 10% and all, but still it is a norm, general standard followed throughout the world, not only by India. So that is the definition of FDI and important concept of FDI. And what will be the components of FDI in general? FDI generally will have three components. One is equity capital investment. Second is reinvested earnings, because once the investment is made by a foreign company into an Indian company, we are taking Indian example only always. So let us say a foreign company invested in the Indian company made some profits, and that profits are not distributed, they are reinvested. So to the extent of eligibility of the share of a foreign company in the Indian company's earnings, that is as good as reinvested only. So that is also part of FDI, though it is not a fresh flow. It is a earnings earned in India but reinvested into the company here itself. So that is also part of FDI. But majorly equity capital will be the big portion of FDI. Then reinvested earnings. Then sometimes, not necessarily always, there could be intra-company loans also between the parent and affiliate enterprises. Possibly, some foreign company may give loans, intra-company only, within the group loans actually can happen between parent company and affiliate enterprise. So that also is part of FDI. So these are the three components of FDI, you can say. Each of them can be a question, simple direct question, direct answer, full marks. Three components: equity capital, reinvested earnings, intra-company loans between parent and affiliate enterprises. These are the components of FDI. Then, what are the different categories of FDI? This can be a question also. Each of them is a possible question. What categories of FDI? Separately, short notes question can be asked on each of them also. There are three categories broadly speaking. One is called a horizontal FDI. Second is called a vertical FDI. Third one is called as a conglomerate FDI. From the strategic management, we can understand the same meaning here. In case of a horizontal FDI, what happens is the investor establishes the same type of business operation. He is not going to diversify or something. He is going to invest in the same type of business operation in a foreign country as it operates in its home country. McDonald's provides burgers in America and it invests in India and starts McDonald's restaurants in India. Here also it is providing burgers only. It is not going to start a McDonald's finance company. It did not start. Maybe it will start, we don't know. But if that starts a McDonald's finance company in India or McDonald's bank, something like that, if it starts in India, then it becomes a conglomerate. It is not horizontal FDI. But no, McDonald's has been selling burgers throughout the world, and in India also it sells the burgers only majorly. It's a food company. Same type of business operation it has started in India also. Like that, a cell phone company based in America invests in India to do the same business can be taken as an example. Like that, any example. Starbucks is a coffee chain which is there throughout the world. It is selling coffee only in India, no? Starbucks did not come to India and start selling something else. It is not. It is selling coffee only. So that is horizontal FDI. They do the same business what they have been doing elsewhere. That is what is horizontal FDI. Then vertical FDI is something, or vertical investment is that under which the investor establishes or acquires a business activity in a foreign country which is different from the investor's main business activity. It is not exactly the same, yet in some way it supplements its major activity. It supplements, it helps the major activity, but directly the new FDI is not coming for the same business activity which is the main activity of that particular company. For example, Boeing has an office in India, it has sales in India, and maybe it will have some small parts manufactured in India. But that is not going to manufacture full-fledged aeroplanes in India. No, its main business activity is to manufacture aeroplanes. That it is not doing in India, but it is doing something else which is related to the major activity. It is supplementing the major activity. Same way, as an example, if you take, let us say, an automobile company may acquire an interest in a foreign company that supplies tires. So automobile tires are a little bit related, definitely yes, because automobile company requires tires. It is not setting up a new automobile company in the other country, rather it is buying shares in or establishing a new company in a foreign country that manufactures and supplies tires. Like this vertical investment happens lot of times. It so happens that vertical investment is made for the purpose of cost saving and somehow to reduce the overall burden on the parent company. So the call centers, for example, which are all part of the vertical investment, which are made outside India by the foreign, in India by the foreign countries. Like that, any investment which is made into a business which is not directly related to the main business, but somehow it supplements the original business, is called as a vertical investment. Then the third type of FDI is conglomerate type of FDI, where the investor makes the foreign investment in a business that is completely unrelated. It is not at all related to the existing business in its home country. For example, if Google or Microsoft comes to India and starts manufacturing cars or let us say bikes, that is completely different from what they normally do. Of course, Google is doing some research on some driverless car and all, that's different. But imagine some software company coming to India and establishing a car manufacturing company. That is completely unrelated. Or let us say Microsoft comes to India and starts a Microsoft bank. That is completely unrelated. Like that, conglomerate type of FDI could be where the investor invests in a foreign country but into a business which is not at all related to the existing business in the home country. In the home country, it is a different core business for them, but in the other country, they are starting some new entity which does completely a different kind of business which has no relation with the main business. Then it is conglomerate. If it has some relation with the main business, then it is vertical. And if it is same business as main business, then it is horizontal. These are the three different categories of FDI: horizontal, vertical, and conglomerate types of FDI. Very important question. Then another short note question can be asked: what is this two-way FDI? Two-way FDI means one country investing in another country and the other country investing in the first country. That is called two-way FDI, or we can call it as reciprocal investment. This can happen. Earlier it used to happen also a lot. Not now much. But what is the concept of this two-way FDI? These are the reciprocal investments between the countries that occur when some industries are more advanced in one nation. Only for example, let us say computer industry is more advanced in the United States. So Japanese companies will invest in the computer industry of America. Then American companies will invest in the automobile industry of Japan because automobile industry is more advanced in Japan. So if that kind of reciprocal investment is happening, then it is called as two-way FDI. Usually it happens when one particular country is more sophisticated and more skilled in one kind of manufacturing activity or a particular service. In that case, so there will be FDI from one country into the other and vice versa also. That is what is called two-way FDI. That can be a small short note question separately. That is about, in general, what is FDI, different categories of FDI, components of FDI, two-way FDI, etc. Now coming to the FPI, that is foreign portfolio investment. It is the flow of what we call as financial capital. It is not real capital, it is just financial capital, not real capital, and does not involve ownership or control on the part of the investor. The intention of the investor is not to have ownership or control of the target company. It is only just to have an investment into shares, mostly the shares and bonds and financial instruments. So unlike FDI, this portfolio capital moves to investment in financial stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments, and is affected largely through the capital market. So some foreign portfolio investors will directly purchase some shares of the Indian company in the Indian stock markets directly. They can do that. Daily we see in the newspapers also and televisions also. Foreign institutional investors have invested this much money today. They have withdrawn this much money today. They will do anything. They can do anything. One day they can buy the Indian company's shares. Other day they can sell and just get out of India. That is completely free. Just like that, they can come in anytime, go anytime. Very volatile. FPI is very volatile. It can come also, it can go also as they wish. The intention is not long-termistic. Intention is not to have a relationship with the target company. It is only to just take the advantage of the price movements in the target company's share. So that is what is FPI, which is generally going to happen through the capital market. And usually when can we say it is FPI? As we discussed already, following the international standards, portfolio investments are characterized by lower stake in the companies at below 10%. If one foreign company acquires less than 10% of equity shares in an Indian company, then we can call that FPI, not FDI. But once again, it is only general standard throughout the world which is used. Not necessarily it has to be taken in a very literal manner. Government data sometimes mixes FPI and FDI in a big time. They will not distinguish. So they will put everything under FDI only, even though the percentage acquisition was less than 10%. So actually most of the times the central government declines to distinguish much between FDI and FPI when they publish data. But yes, when it comes to companies, when they declare themselves what is their investment coming from outside India to India, then this 10% rule they have to follow. That is from SEBI guidelines also, it is okay. But once again, as far as the official statistics of inflows of capital into India are concerned, there is a huge distortion of data. That is the reality, whether we like it or not. When it comes to how much is FPI and how much is FDI, that distinction is difficult to make. And governments generally try to not make that distinction also much, because they want to show the FDI numbers high. Naturally, they want to show that we are attractive, our country is attractive, a lot of foreign capital is flowing into our country, foreign investors are all interested in our country, we are giving red carpet to the foreign investments. All these things when they want to show, naturally they will sometimes mix up FPI also with FDI, but that is reality. But actually, technically speaking, both are not same. FDI is different, wherein the investor invests in the target company more than 10%. FPI is different, where the investor invests in the target company less than 10%. Now to summarize this, there can be a question definitely possible to be asked as distinguish between FDI and FPI. 5 marks question also can be asked, important possible question. So what are the things here? FDI requires and involves in general the creation of physical assets. Some new assets are going to be created. If new company is created, possibly. Once again, here also in FDI, there are two ways. Not necessarily always all the FDIs create new assets. That is called greenfield FDI, and some other things are called brownfield FDI. Greenfield FDIs definitely create physical assets. Let us say Microsoft comes to Hyderabad and starts its office in Hyderabad. So that creates a physical asset. There is one huge building, either they construct or take on lease, and they move in people there, and they invest a lot of money in the infrastructure, interior, computers, networks, everything. That involves definitely the creation of physical assets. That is a greenfield investment. On the other side, Microsoft comes and buys 4% share in Jio. That does not create any physical asset freshly. Already whatever assets are there, it is only buying a share of it. So that can be called a brownfield investment. So brownfield investments are different, greenfield investments are different. Greenfield investments create physical assets. Brownfield investments do not create physical assets. FPIs though do not create anything. That is only just investment in financial assets. And as we already discussed, FDI has in general long-term interest, whereas FPI has short-term interest. That is only going to be remained invested for short periods. And FDI is relatively difficult to withdraw, relatively. And FPI, daily it can be just withdrawn also, invested also. Very easy to withdraw FPI. And generally FDI is not speculative. It is not speculative. It is an investment properly made in a target company, and the person who has invested through FDI is interested in the growth of that company and wants to be part of the management, or want to be part of the person who is want to have control on that company. So the speculative motive is not much when anybody invests through FDI. But FPIs are clearly speculative in nature because they just are interested in buying and selling of shares, nothing else. They buy the shares, sell the shares, just like trading business, shares trading. That's what they do. So FPI is more of foreign institutional investors or foreign investors, whoever they are, just buying and selling shares in the stock market. That is why it is speculative in nature, not with a long-term intention of investment. And in general, once again, FDI is accompanied by technology transfer, not always, but often. But here FPI does not have any technology transfer at all. It is only going to create financial assets, invest in financial assets, that's all. So which are not tangible also nowadays. So no technology transfer and all happens from the foreign company into the host company or the country domestic company which is created in the host country. So technology transfer happens probably in FDI, not always once again. But in case of FPI, no technology transfer at all, not at all. And usually, once again, greenfield FDI particularly creates a direct impact on employment of the labor and wages. And here, FPI do not have any kind of impact on the employment because no new jobs are created in FPI. Some person who has money is buying and selling shares in Indian stock market. What it will create employment in India just because of that? Nothing. So no direct impact will be there on the employment in case of FPI. FDI definitely creates jobs. How many foreign companies have come to India and started their business? So many companies are there having their offices in India. They have branches, they have associate companies, joint ventures, and direct investment they have made. Some of them have their own complete infrastructure, like Amazon, for example, has built huge godowns everywhere, warehouses everywhere in India. So, some extent, definitely they created physical assets also and created employment also. So that is FDI we can call, not FPI. Somebody just buying the shares in the stock market is FPI. That is the distinction. FDI is more actually useful for the economy compared with FPI. FDI is more long-termistic in nature and healthy. FPI is speculative in nature, and naturally any foreign investor will only invest with a view to make profit. What India is actually gaining in that, frankly speaking, nothing. Only when the FPI comes into India, to some extent our foreign currency reserves will go up. But they may go down also anytime because they can withdraw that money also anytime. So really there is no additional investment benefit that India, or any, for that matter, any country which receives FPIs will obtain. But still, in the internationally open markets now, because of the globalization, we have to keep our capital markets also open to the other countries, which we are doing. That is why huge amounts of money is flooding into the Indian stock markets daily. But once again, flooding does not mean it is only coming in. It comes, goes. Like any other normal share trader, stock trader, that will also be very volatile. So that is what is FPI, which is also part of the overall capital market and financial system. But still, compared to FPI, FDI is more useful since it creates employment, since it may create physical assets, and it has a long-term interest in the growth of the target company, which is in our country. And it is not much speculative. And sometimes it can be accompanied by technology transfer also, which means the company which is in India can understand certain things from the foreign investor. A lot of times it happens. Like Indian private banks majorly got benefited by international banking companies investing in their shares. Also, not just investment, the technology transfer also, they have learned a lot of systems, good practices from the foreign counterparts. So technology transfer is something that happens through FDI. So when compared with these two things, FDI is better for a country and economy than FPI. But of course, in any country which is an open economy like India, both exist. FDI also, FPI also. Then what are the reasons for FDI in general? Each of them can be a question as usual. Why somebody will come to another country and invest? Why that much of interest? Could be anything. Many main reasons could be to earn profits, higher rate of return could be there, possible economies of large scale operation can happen. This is what is the major reason for many companies starting their manufacturing facilities in China, because it is possible to do a very heavy large scale operation in China. From that they get economies of scale, and that helped so many multinational organizations in the world. Every gadget that you take, whether it is a Apple gadget or any other company's gadget, manufacturing though definitely happens in China. Why? Because economies of scale are high there. Large scale operations production can be done. And sometimes risk diversification could be the objective. Why to have all factories in one country? If something happens to that country, that entire company will be problematic in problem. So risk diversification also is one of the objectives possible. And retention of the trade patents. Sometimes it so happens if you don't invest in another country, your patents will not be followed by the other country and they may copy your product. So rather than allowing the other country to copy your product, you can just go to other country and start your own product. So retention of trade patents could be another reason. Capture of emerging markets, definitely. All the countries like India, Korea, China, Brazil, these are all emerging markets, and that is why a lot of foreign direct investment flows into these countries. And another things like lower host country environmental and labor standards. Once again, China is an example where environmental standards are as good as non-existent. Labor standards, though, nobody knows actually what is the fate of labor in China, because they are completely in an autocratic situation. Of course, India is also trying to copy that, reducing the environmental controls and labor laws also to be relaxed in future. Once that happens, maybe FDI will be more interested in us also, as it was with China earlier. But again, just to take an example, if a company wants to manufacture some cars in Europe, and this happened also actually, if some Volkswagen, for example, from Germany manufactured cars in Europe, and little bit of deviation in the pollution standards has almost made that company bankrupt, almost on the verge of bankruptcy it went, because the government has really taken strict action against them. So environmental standards are strict in European countries, particularly. America and all don't care much about environment. Europe, too much of focus on environment will be there in general. Labor standards are high, costly also. Labor standards are high and very expensive labor is there for the companies. So when compared to that labor, which is costly, they better go to a country like Thailand, China, India, Philippines, where the labor is cheap. So that could be another reason for FDI. And bypassing of the non-tariff and tariff barriers also could be another reason. If they are manufacturing some goods in America, let us say Apple is exporting the phones, iPhones, to India, which it has been doing all these days. Now imagine if India levies higher customs duties on the Apple products, tariff measures or non-tariff measures if India takes to restrict this, then what Apple will tell? Slowly it will tell, Baba, I will manufacture in India only. So I will start a separate factory in India. That's anyway is real example also, because it is going to start. So manufacturing of the Apple mobiles and other products can happen in India only now, so that they don't have to worry too much about the tariff and non-tariff barriers that India puts on their products and imports. So rather than going through all those barriers, better to start a new factory in the country itself. That's what they do. And that's what many of the companies have done. Kia has done that to India, started a new manufacturing of cars factory in India. Xiaomi, Chinese company, mobile company, has started its manufacturing and assembly actually in India. Like that, Apple has started. Hyundai a long back has started manufacturing in India, which is a Korean company. Like that, many foreign companies have done manufacturing in India, and even that exporting from India also in some cases, to avoid tariff and non-tariff barriers which are imposed by India. That is also another reason. Importing of a car to India is very expensive. But manufacturing of a car in India and selling to the Indians is a lucrative option for them. So that is why all foreign cars are there now here in India. Toyota, Ford, everybody is there in India, who are all manufacturing also in India and selling their cars in India, which they could not have done if they wanted to manufacture outside India and export to India. 100% customs duty is there. So it is better to manufacture in India than pay that much of customs duty. So automobile industry in India is the best example of how they bypassed the tariff barriers in India by setting up a plant in India itself. Then cost effective availability of the needy inputs, that as we just now discussed, inputs like labor and capital may be cheaper in one country, and sometimes there could be tax incentives and investment incentives can be given by the governments for foreign flow of capital into their country. These are all possible reasons for which FDI can be actually increasing, or it can be entered into by some companies in the other countries. Why one country goes and invests in another country is because of any of these reasons. All of them generally are commonly looked at, and in combination of them only the foreign companies will invest in the other countries. So it could be for earning higher returns, or economies of scale, risk diversification, capture of emerging markets, retention of trade patents, or reduced environmental and labor standards in the host country, and bypassing of tariff and non-tariff barriers, and probably in the host country the needed inputs are cheaper. Maybe the host country is also giving tax and investment incentives. Any of these reasons can be there for FDI. Now, what are the different modes of FDI? What can be the ways of FDI? One, these are direct things, that the foreign direct investment can take place through any of them following routes. One, opening of a subsidiary or an associate company, let us say in India, by a foreign company, that is one way. Equity injection, not opening anything special, but already an existing company in India is there. In that, somebody will buy certain percentage. For example, Flipkart is having some percentage of shareholding by Alibaba, and even Walmart. Walmart holds percentage share in Flipkart. So the point is what? Walmart is not going to separately start another online portal like which is competitive to Flipkart, but it is just buying some shares in Flipkart. Like that, Paytm or Ola, many of these companies have foreign investment through equity. So that is another way of FDI. Most popular way normally is this. Acquiring a controlling interest is also similar, like equity injection only. Mergers and acquisitions is another thing. Directly acquiring one company or merging with one another foreign company is another possible way of FDI. And this happens, FDI does not mean only into India we are looking at. Indian companies also do investment in other countries. For example, Tata has acquired the Land Rover business. So Tata Land Rover is the company now there, which is there in Europe. So the Range Rover, Jaguar, all these brands are now part of the Tata group. They just acquired the company entirely. Same way the Tata Tea Limited has acquired Tetley Tea. Tetley Tea is one of the popular tea brands in Europe and other countries. Tata acquired Tetley Tea. So that is the mergers and acquisitions route of FDI. That is from India going to other countries. For that country it is FDI only. No? So that is another route. Like that, foreign companies can come and directly acquire the entire business of one domestic company. That is mergers and acquisitions. Joint venture is another way. Greenfield investment is another way. So any of these routes can be there. Any of these modes can be there for FDI, through which the investment actually takes place. Opening of a subsidiary or an associate company, equity injection or acquiring a controlling interest, mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, and greenfield investment. These are the different modes of FDI. Now moving on to the advantages and disadvantages of FDI. This is a generic discussion, but still these points can be asked as questions. So let us quickly go through what are the benefits, which are advantages of FDI, and after that we will go to the disadvantages of FDI also. First thing first, the benefits of FDI include positive outcomes of competition, such as cost reduction and quality improvement. So cost reduction can happen, quality improvement can happen through innovations, and this can be even seen in automobile sector also in India very clearly. After the automobile sector is open to the other countries' brands, quality has increased of many of the cars and bikes in India, and definitely the cost of production also has reduced because of that, because of new innovations and technology improvements. So that is one of the benefits of FDI. Higher efficiency can be achieved. This can be more observed in the banking sector in India, and huge variety of better products and services at lower prices. When FDI is open, many different products are there, variety products are there at lower prices. So consumers' choice will become more when more foreign brands are allowed to do business within our country. Same way, welfare for consumers will be there, and multiplier effect, very important thing on the employment. So if FDI comes, let us say $100 million, is it going to add $100 million only to the economy or GDP? No, we know that that will be having a multiplier effect. So it will have maybe 4 times, 5 times more addition to the overall GDP. That means the way the FDI really actually adds to the value to an economy is more than the absolute amount that actually is brought. And not only that, it has good effect on employment also. So it generates employment, particularly when it is greenfield FDI. Then output and income, relatively higher wages will come. It's one more thing. Normally, yes, when there is better output and income, higher wages will be also there. And better access to the foreign markets will be generated through FDI. That is also there. And control of the domestic monopolies can happen. And betterment of the balance of payments position also can happen. So these are the various things for arguments which are favoring FDI. Balance of payments also, how can it be better? Just like earlier, as we said, if we are importing some commodity from outside, then our balance of payments position will be bad. If that commodity is manufactured in India, which we are now calling it as Make in India and all, so that is better now. That will improve the balance of payments position. At least automobile, electronics and all, they can be manufactured in India. Why should we import? So that improves the balance of payments position. But in that course, what we are calling the foreign companies to start their business in India. We are calling Make in India. We are not saying that made in India only. That doesn't matter. Made in India, by India is different. Any company in the world can come to India, and Make in India is the offer that we are giving to the world by announcing that program and encouraging the foreign investments to our country. Why are we doing that? Because of all these possible potential benefits that FDI can bring. Some of them we have been seeing since 1991 when we opened our economy till now. And of course, there are some of the side effects also which will be disadvantages. Like any other policy, every policy will have positives also, negatives also. Positives definitely there. Better products and services are available. Yes, that is very much clear, particularly in mobile phones. If you see technology related products, televisions, electronics, all these products are now too much of varieties available at very lower prices to consumers like us. And definitely it has reduced the cost of production also. And it has created relatively reasonable employment also. And it has controlled the domestic monopolies also. Just for example, though I did not actually experience it or have seen that, even in my childhood or prior to that, when Bajaj used to be the only scooter available in India, they say, even maybe before I was born, Bajaj used to be the only scooter available in India. No other scooter was there. And the people used to say that 5,000 rupees something advance they have to pay, and waiting list used to be there for almost 6 months, 7 months like that. So if somebody wants to buy a scooter, he has to pay 5,000 rupees first, 5,000 those days, huge amount, and wait, that too. That was the situation then. To buy a scooter itself, it was very difficult. Now what? Anybody can just walk into a showroom and just come out on a bike. All the formalities and registration, everything can be done there in the showroom itself. So that much easy it has become. Why is that? When many other companies have been opened into India, which was the first one which gave tucker to Bajaj was Vespa. Those days it was LML Vespa. So that gave Piaggio company and Vespa. They gave tucker to Bajaj, and slowly the monopoly of Bajaj was shaken. Of course, later on, the people's tastes and preferences themselves have changed. Now scooters are no more fashionable. Either we have non-geared scooters like Activa, etc. That is also done by Honda. Or we have bikes, which are more popular now, which have gears. So this entire thing has created a huge competition. And the Bajaj's monopoly, which they enjoyed earlier as the one and only manufacturer in India is not there anymore. That has ended because of so many companies allowed, whether directly or through joint venture in India. Maruti Suzuki is also, Maruti is not just an Indian company, it is Maruti Suzuki, Japanese company Suzuki, and Maruti, Indian company, joint venture that is originally. Now it is all same. So like that, FDI has increased a lot of areas of betterment in life. A lot of comfort has increased, sophistication has come. So many ways it has definitely added, we can say, positive things in the overall, let us say, living standards of the people in our country. That can be definitely visibly seen in the past 25 years or so of the opening up of Indian economy since 1991. So almost 30 years, we can say, nearing to 30 years now. So that much of improvement is there. That is the one side of the story, which is advantages. Disadvantages are also many, and this can just list can go endless also. But just to write some of them, you can write some of these things. And it so happens that most of the cases, inappropriate capital intensive methods are used in a labor abundant country. Don't we see that in India? We are a labor abundant country. And what all these foreign investing companies are starting here in India, manufacturing companies especially, they are all starting, let us say, automobiles only. A lot of automated processes are there. Robots actually manufacture the cars more than people nowadays. A lot of machines and equipments are there, capital intensive, automated processes are there, which more than labor intensive production processes. But we are a labor abundant country. So employment is not that much generated as it should have. That is one of the things which is a limitation, we can say, of FDI. Disadvantages, limitations, problems, whatever we call it, hurdles, anything we can call any of these things. And capital intensive methods used in a labor abundant country is a wrong thing that FDI generally does. And regional disparity will be increased because of this, because some of the countries will have more development, some others will not have. Crowding out of domestic investments, because the money is going out of the domestic country and that is going to some other country. So what is happening? Domestic investments are not enough. So that is another limitation of FDI to the countries which generally are more investing in other countries. Like this disadvantage more applicable to USA type of countries where investment is going out also more. Of course, investment comes into USA also, goes out of USA also. But when it goes out of USA, to that extent, domestic investments in USA are crowded out. They are not going to be there. So that is a problem. Then diversion of capital resulting in distorted pattern of production and investment. So diversion of capital is one of the other disadvantages of FDI that might create a distorted pattern of production and investment, may not be a uniform planned process. So that is one more disadvantage. Like this, so many are there. Instability in the balance of payments and exchange rates can happen. Indiscriminate repatriation of profits can happen. Too much of profits can be repatriated by these companies and actual benefits of FDI may not really be accrued to the host country. Anti-ethical market distortions also can happen. A lot of times the big companies also resort to anti-ethical distortions. For example, any company coming to India as an FDI, it will not come like a direct company. So it will have another route. Maybe it will start a small company in Mauritius or Singapore or Hong Kong or Cyprus, like that, some other countries, and they will route their investments through them. They don't invest directly into India. Some other fake company or shell company will be there somewhere, suitcase company, whatever we call it. Through that, they will invest in India. Anti-ethical type of practices are followed in FDI. That is quite common. And shifting of jobs happens, offshoring happens. Of course, this applies to developed countries where Europe has experienced this. Lot of unemployment increased in Europe because of most of the manufacturing organizations in Europe have shifted to China. So the jobs of the Europeans was lost. That is a disadvantage for the country, once again, which is investing. So disadvantages will be there for the host country also. Disadvantages will be there for the guest country also, or the investor country also. Both sides we are looking at. So offshoring or shifting of the jobs will be the disadvantage for the investor country. Then over exploitation of natural resources causing environmental damage. That also happens when huge factories are built. They're all built after clearing the jungles only. So much of environmental damage happens whenever the multinationals are going to another country and starting huge operations. So over exploitation of natural resources is a very clear thing. Environmental damage is very clear thing that we can see. Global warming increases. Natural resources like water are getting drained out. So a lot of problems are there with this FDI flowing freely from one country to another country. For example, Coca-Cola type of companies come to countries like India and they will drain out our water. Our farmers will not get water from the bores. Whereas Coca-Cola can have powerful engines and powerful motors with which it will take a lot of groundwater out. Of course, it may pay a price, but again, over exploitation happens because of such kind of practices possible, and that is another limitation. Monopoly power can be exercised. Now, already we observed this. Lot of the giant multinational organizations are so powerful that they can dictate the other countries' governments also sometimes, or even the entire market they can monopolize. That is quite possible. And decreased competitiveness of domestic companies. Ultimately, when FDI comes in, our domestic companies will be definitely destroyed. When Walmart started its operations in India, a lot of retailers have lost their business. Like even you can say Amazon and big e-commerce companies are there, which are having huge warehouses and distributing millions and millions of products daily to the crores of people throughout the country. What about the roadside corner small shop which sells mobile phones or which sells small computer accessories? Mostly they will become extinct in future. They will not be there because most of the people will order from Amazon and big brands only, companies like Flipkart, Amazon, etc. So what happens? The local small domestic companies will lose their employment. Ola, Uber have definitely created us comfort, no doubt. That is as advantage point of view. Disadvantage point of view, if you look at a social level, it has created problem to the auto drivers because auto drivers have lost their incomes because of this. They lost their jobs because of this. A lot of people are not able to earn as much as they used to earn earlier. So like that, domestic companies and domestic businesses will be very badly damaged because of FDI. That is one of the other big disadvantages we can say. And sometimes they can even jeopardize the national security and sovereignty also. And we can see that in many cases. Recently, the government of India itself has banned some of the Chinese mobile phone apps and games, and some of the brands software also is banned. Why is that? Government was telling it was against our national security. We allowed foreign companies to sell their products and services like software and other apps in India through FDI or whatever the reason, ways it is. But now they are they are having a kind of watch on us, or maybe they are entering into our privacy, and maybe they're having a lot of data that is collected. Maybe that is jeopardizing our national security itself. We allowed them to come to our country and do business. And if they are spying on us, let us say, that is dangerous. We don't know that. Actually, we don't know. A lot of times it so happens many of the foreign companies may have certain elements of international spies. We don't know that. That can jeopardize national security. Of course, it's a different story. Just because it may jeopardize, we will stop FDI and all. It will not happen like that. It is a balanced approach. Some things where we are clearly knowing that there is a problem with such kind of companies and organizations, then yes, they can be banned. Otherwise, other companies can be having a little bit of watch on them. But definitely any company which is so powerful, big multinational organizations can sometimes jeopardize national security also sometimes. These are all the disadvantages of FDI. But as I said, whether it is advantages or disadvantages, you don't have to write all of them. Write core some of them, what you can remember according to the number of marks awarded in the question. But we should know both sides of the coin for sure. But don't think that these are the only things. This is a debatable issue. There can be a seminar on this whole day. People can talk about favoring FDI. People can talk about dangers of FDI. All these things will be there, which is quite possible as a social studies debate. But that is not our objective. So what we will try to do is try to remember some of these core points of what are the benefits of FDI and what are the problems with FDI, which can be from examination point of view an important aspect. Now coming to the Indian case, there are so much of other things given in the ICA material which are outdated, so there is no need to really go through all that. And we don't need to be really knowing the current numbers also. Again, this is not a general knowledge exam. So let us stick to a broader perspective of what is the India's case now since 1991 and later on even after 2014 also. Certain steps taken in India are there which are good steps to promote FDI. In general, a question can be asked, what steps are taken in India to promote FDI? So many things are there, but we are just listing some of them. First thing first, we have now made it automatic approval of FDI. There used to be earlier a government route. There is something called a government route and there was something called as automatic route. Earlier there are some industries which can enter into India after the government approval is given. Then only they can enter into India. And there used to be another organization within the government called Foreign Investments Promotion Board, FIPB it is called. So FIPB will sit on that proposal and they may say sometimes yes, sometimes no. Corruption was there. Lot of issues were there. Now what happened? All these things are now done away with. No FIPB, no government route, most of the industries. Now FDI is automatic. So automatic route is more popular now in India. Almost all industries, almost all, not all, but almost all can invest in India through automatic route without any specific approval from anybody. That much openness we have opened the gates. That is the automatic approval route of FDI is a big step taken towards encouragement of FDIs into India. And procedures are simplified. Definitely simplification of procedures happened. And that's what is reflected in the better ranking in ease of doing business. That increases the potential for FDI. That is through simplification of procedures. Then FEMA has been introduced, which clearly tells how the flow of capital can happen into India and outside India. Special economic zones are very crucial area where the foreign companies can start some business within India's special economic zone and they can be tax-free also sometimes. So a lot of tax incentives are given to the special economic zones. So that attracts FDIs into India. And also the government encourages the foreign technology collaboration agreements. So if there are any agreements between an Indian company and a foreign company for a technological level collaboration, those are encouraged. And now actually in India, almost all sectors, almost all, 100% FDI is allowed. Almost all, not all, but almost all. Again, we don't need to know which sectors are all 100%, which are only 75%, which are 50%. That is general knowledge. That is not our objective here. If you are anybody is interested, you can Google that. But now most of the sectors in India have allowance of 100% FDI. So that is one of the other relaxations that the government has given. Recent government, current government and earlier governments also have done, but current government definitely has opened the FDI route and FDI's ease of doing business and all definitely has made it much better investment place. India is considered to be a better investment place now in the eyes of the world investors. That kind of image definitely the current government has created in the world for a potentially attractive investment destination. As India being a potentially attractive investment destination, we were able to project it because of many measures taken by the government. Generally, removal of FIPB is a huge step. That is a huge step, and once that is removed, most of the red tape is gone. Most of the bureaucracy, red tape, corruption, that is all almost minimalized. So any company genuinely want to invest in India earlier used to face a lot of problems. Now that many problems are not there. See, problems will be always there. I'm not saying that nobody can say that there is no corruption in India. Maybe if FIPB does not do corruption, the local municipal sanitary inspector or pollution control board inspector will do corruption. Fire safety officer, 100 people will be there who will do corruption. That's okay. That is part of it. But at least hurdles are reduced now. That is how the India has made FDIs relatively attractive, and they made India relatively attractive for FDIs, we can say. And easing of FDIs happened in multiple sectors recently, including defense sector. Earlier we were very closed for defense sector. Now we are allowing FDI in defense sector also. E-commerce we all know, that is where Amazon and all are there. Pharma sector, most of the international famous companies, Glenmark or even Pfizer type of companies, GlaxoSmithKline, and many international companies, they have their factories in India. So pharmaceuticals, FDI is encouraged. Animal husbandry also to some extent it is encouraged. Single brand retail trading is also encouraged. Multi-brand, single brand, different types of retail trading is there. So these are the various ways of FDI directly which is possible to be entering into India in the different sectors. Multi-brand is not yet completely clear, but there are again different ways of anti-ethical or unethical practices that the multinationals resort to, and somehow they don't 100% follow the government regulations. But as far as government regulations are concerned, FDI 100% very comfortably is allowed into almost all sectors nowadays, which were earlier closed also. Now they are opened, including airlines and including some of the things like media. Also, some of the percentages have been increased in FDI. So, at a conceptual level or at a policy level, definitely the India is moving towards a better destination for FDI. That is for sure. That is the case of India. And let us just look at some of the realities of what happened to the story of India. Again, you don't need to remember any of these things, only for example purposes. How the FDI has grown in India for all these years. You can see this as a graph just to understand that. So a lot of growth happened definitely from 2000, if you take as a starting year, 2019, so much of growth happened. Almost from around $2.5 billion to almost $46 billion. This is the investment of only America in India, not other countries also. Of course, most of the FDI is from American companies, not through America, but from American companies. So this much of $46 billion is the investment position of America in India, we can say. That much increase has happened definitely. That is one indication. But once again, in general, our FDI recently, not just from America, is ranging somewhere between 40 to $50 billion approximately. Somewhere in between this, it has been ranging from the past 5-6 years, we can say. Somewhere between 40 to 50. Last year only almost it touched 50. Close to 50 it has touched. But yes, is it the best country or number one country in the form of FDI in the world? No, that is wrong. A lot of times people just get misled by. In our country's intra comparison, yes, we are doing better. It is increasing, no doubt. But when compared with other countries, where are we standing? Here we are standing. This is the FDI into India. Almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th position we can say. Beyond us, particularly in 2019 ranking, 8th position. So these are the countries where most of the FDI flows in. Look at this, America, top $251 billion flows into America each year. In 2019, $251 billion has flown in. It may be a small number for them. For them, it is not a big number. Even if you look at China also, $140 billion, almost 3 times of India. Singapore itself, such a small country, but $110 billion has flown in. Brazil has done better than India. UK, of course, being a developed country, it will attract some investments. Hong Kong itself has attracted 55. If you add this and Hong Kong and China, then it goes to 195. Then almost 4 times than India, we can say. France is almost equal to us. So like this, many countries, Canada and Germany, have attracted this much of billions of dollars of investment in 2018 and 2019, just a general comparison. So yes, from 2018 to 2019, our position has improved, no doubt. From $42 billion to $49 billion, our FDI has increased. And our overall FDI has always been increasing continuously almost, except for a few years here and there. That is at a broader level, yes. But still, there is a long way. That is the point. India to be equal to Singapore or China is a long way. Still, we have to do lot of effort and so many steps have to be taken. Though we have taken all these things, they are not just enough. So many other steps are also supposed to be taken. The society should be, first of all, free of bias and hatred and other things. That is a major thing investors look like. That means there should be peace and harmony in the society in general. Also, not just that. That is one of the reasons, one of the factors. Education definitely has to be improved. Innovation has to be done better. And corruption has to be removed at a ground level, not just only from top level. From top to bottom corruption, if it can be controlled in India, definitely we have the potential to reach to one of the top countries in the world in this list. At least in the top 3, if we will be, then a lot of advantages of FDI definitely we can face. Again, that does not mean there will not be disadvantages. Disadvantages will come with them. It is again our choice. Do we really want to take FDI or not. That is only a decision. Do you want our country to be open country or a closed country? We have decided to be open in 1991. What is there freshly to decide today? Since 1991, we decided to be an open economy. We said globalization, liberalization, privatization. That's it. Once that policy is taken, in that how can we do better? In that how can we make better improvement and progress and development? How better the national income can be improved? How better the standard of living of the people? Most important thing is purchasing power of the people have to be improved. GDP improving, national income improving, GDP per capita improving is all good, not bad, but that is not enough. Ultimate main point for an economy as a general indicator is purchasing power of the people should increase. Means people should have money in their pockets to spend. If that is improving, then the country is in a good position. It is prospering. If that is not improving, all the other things, they will all be peripheral. FDI comes, FDI will be there, they will just buy some of our companies. In other words, our Indian entrepreneurs will become richer. So what? Ultimately, what is the final benefit to the normal person may not be that much. But when the actual FDI comes into the green field, something like Kia started manufacturing in India, that is an actual FDI. That's a greenfield investment. So it is a different debate how much of employment it has created. Something is better than nothing. Na? So we cannot completely say that no employment itself is created. It's a huge plant and a lot of employment is created. There are problems, but still employment generation happens with the greenfield investments of FDI. So point is, now there is no backward turning. We cannot turn back. Already we missed the bus. China has crossed us long back in the manufacturing sector. But of course, we became better in service sector. We got that opportunity from the software and other service sectors. Definitely, we are doing good job in that service sector. But if we really want to have better, strong manufacturing sector also to really fulfill the dream or the slogan of Make in India, lot of FDI is supposed to come, and that has to be attracted by keeping all the aspects in the society and economy in a correct, transparent manner. It cannot happen. FDIs and other foreign companies will not just like that come just because of our publicity and whatever the you can say big slogans that we give. That is not going to just attract anybody. They are not fools. See, we can fool our public though, no problem. That is okay. But we cannot fool the foreign investors and all. They will come when we really create an environment of investment, when we really create that their investments are safe, risk is less, social risk is less, business risk is less, financial risk is less, tax risk and policy risks are less. When they feel all these things are there stable, then they will definitely come. Otherwise, they will think about other countries where their risk is less. They will shift there. That's what happened. Even recently also, most of the investment after the corona days shifted from China to other countries like Thailand or even Bangladesh, Philippines, Taiwan. Lot of investment shifted from China to Taiwan. But still it is not coming to India that much. Whereas our potential is huge. We have so much of population which is ready to work, willing to work. Whether skilled or not is a different discussion, but at least it's okay. We can make them skilled. A lot of encouragement is there from the government side. So from top level, there is no restriction. At the operational level, people are there, resources are there. We have land, we have water. No country has water. We have so much water, which no other country has generally can imagine. So a lot of good things are there. But still, why we are failing to attract the investments compared to the other countries is what the policy makers have to look at. And if they can overcome those limitations and hurdles, if the ease of doing business is not just a rank, if it is reality, then definitely FDI will come. Then a lot of development also will happen. Of course, simultaneously, some problems also will happen. We cannot avoid that. Everything comes with a side effect. So that is about the foreign capital flow and foreign capital movement across the world in the international trade scenario. With that, we can conclude this entire chapter 4, which is international trade. And not only that, we can also conclude this subject of economics for finance. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye. All the best.